After I was reborn, I realized something terrifying me: 3 older sisters could actually hear my thoughts. Wild, right? You'd think that'd be the ultimate cheat code. That I could finally stop the nightmare from repeating itself. But as soon as I opened my eyes in this life, I knew deep down it was already too late. Should I tell Rebecca, my cold-as-ice eldest sister, that the man she fiercely protects, Ryan Blake, will one day take everything from her: her company, her pride, and her name? I watched her hand pause midair when she reached for his. That twitch in her fingers. That was fear. She didn't know why yet, but part of her already sensed it. Should I warn Emily, the sweet, angelic, Doctor's second sister, that Ryan is going to blind her literally? I watched her jolt upright from his lap like she'd sat on a fire poker. As for Olivia, my youngest sister, that megastar who beams sunshine to fans but steps over her own family, should I tell her she'll spend the rest of her life paralyzed in a hospital bed because Ryan paid someone to run her over? I watched her lift a spoon of porridge to Ryan's lips, then dump it right on his head. Yeah. It's starting. They're hearing me. But are they listening? In my last life, I did everything to stop Ryan from sinking his claws into my sisters. And how did they repay me? By freezing my accounts, kicking me out of the Carter estate, switching my heart meds, trashing my identity, and letting their fans chase me like I was some rabid animal. That day in the crumbling trailer by the garbage dump, I sat in my broken wheelchair, face scarred, heart failing, wearing clothes I hadn't washed in a week because I didn't even have running water. And Ryan? Ryan Blake stood in front of me in a designer suit, one I bought him, with my 3 sisters smiling like he was family. "Ethan," he said, smirking. "If you apologize and call me brother-in-law, I'll take you back to the Carter family. We can pretend this never happened." Brother-in-law? He disfigured me. Drugged me. Kicked me when I was down. And all that because his little system told him I was the obstacle standing in the way of him taking over the Carters. I spat at him. "You think you deserve to be called my brother-in-law? I'd rather die." That was the last straw. Rebecca, me oh so noble CEO sister, slapped me so hard I tasted blood. "Ethan Carter," she said, like my name disgusted her. "You're not my brother anymore. Not after what you did to Ryan." My mouth was dry. My heart seized in pain. But she didn't care. None of them did. Emily walked up, pressed her cigarette into the back of my hand where she used to place a kiss goodnight, and sneered, "You were born with a defective heart, Ethan. Maybe because your soul is rotten too." Olivia knelt down, staring at my emaciated body like I was faking my agony for attention. "Still playing victim, huh? You think this'll make us forgive you? Dream on." And then they left. Just turned their backs. Fans had been waiting outside. Someone threw a dead rat at my door that morning. Another had posted online that they saw me crawling on the pavement like trash. The landlord kicked me out. My medicine ran out. I couldn't even breathe. And as I laid there alone, in the dark, I finally died. But the universe, or whatever messed up God runs this place, decided that wasn't enough. Because now I was back. In the beginning. And I was tired. So damn tired. When I opened my eyes, it wasn't the dump. I was in a sleek luxury kitchen with warm lights glowing over perfectly plated seafood. And there he was, Ryan Blake. Wearing a crisp white shirt, standing like he belonged here. "Ethan," he said with that fake soft voice. "You're not eating. Is it because I cooked it?" I asked Aunt May what your favorite was. "I thought it was shrimp risotto." My stomach churned. I'm allergic to seafood. Always have been. But did anyone care? Rebecca crossed her arms, her expression colder than the fridge behind her. "Ethan," she said sharply. "Ryan made this for you. Whether you like it or not, you eat it." I stared down at the food. I knew if I didn't eat, it'd be used against me. So I did. One bite at a time, fighting the bile in my throat, my tongue going numb. Ryan watched with faux concern while I fought back anaphylaxis just to keep up appearances. The moment I finished, Emily leaned over and smiled. Feeling unwell? Let your big sister take a look. I wanted to scream. She's the one who poisoned me in my last life. She watched me writhe in pain while she sipped coffee like it was a movie. It's just an allergy, I muttered hoarsely. Won't kill me. Olivia blinked, startled. Then she whispered, Ethan, I'm sorry. I forgot. Yeah, forgot. Like they forgot I was their brother. Like they forgot I bled for them. After dinner, I locked myself in my room, chest pounding. Then the knock came. Ryan, again. Ethan, what did I do wrong? His voice trembled. You've been ignoring me, please don't hate me. We're still friends, right? But I heard something else too. A second voice, mechanical and cold. System, warning. Favorability for Olivia Carter is dropping. Host must recover her points immediately. That damn system. Still there. Still whispering in his ear. Just like before. When I was in a coma, I could hear Ryan talking to it, plotting to destroy us all. I tried to warn Rebecca back then. She said I was insane. Said I staged the accident. That I was jealous. She kicked me out in the pouring rain. Told me I was nothing without the Carter name. And now, it's happening again. I opened the door. Ryan stood there, crocodile tears in his eyes. But his gaze flicked over my shoulder straight to Olivia. Ethan, he said, reaching for my hand. I pulled back. Tell me what you want and leave. Olivia tilted her head. Ethan, are you okay? She was using that tone. The I'm worried but also suspicious one. You used to be so close with Ryan. Why are you acting like this? She tried to laugh it off. There's this psychologist I know. Want me to schedule a session? Right. Because clearly if I don't worship Ryan, I'm mentally ill. No thanks, I said, voice flat. Keep your therapy. Olivia flinched. Did I do something wrong? Yeah. You did everything wrong. But I didn't say it. I just shut the door in their faces. And right then, I heard the system's voice again. Warning. Favorability for Olivia Carter has dropped below 50. Please recover immediately. Then Olivia snapped. Her voice turned sharp. You'd better give me a damn explanation, Ryan. Don't think I haven't noticed the games you're playing. And for the first time I heard doubt. From her. Maybe this timeline won't be the same. Maybe not all three sisters will fall. Maybe there's a chance. But honestly, I'm not counting on it. Because this isn't a fair game. It's Ryan's world. I'm just the scapegoat he uses to build his empire. Still, I've got one edge now, I remember everything. And this time, I don't need anyone's forgiveness. I just need to survive long enough to watch him fall. After that night, I stopped pretending. I wasn't going to play nice just to keep peace. I knew Ryan Blake wasn't going to let me live quietly. His system couldn't allow it. Every time I avoided him or said a word that might plant doubt in my sisters, the favorability alerts would ring like alarm bells in his mind, and he'd find a way to twist the narrative, play the victim, or steal the spotlight again. I knew this because I'd seen it all before, lived through it, died because of it. But this time I kept my mouth shut, even if it killed me. I avoided the Carter estate as much as I could, only returning when absolutely necessary, because I knew the moment I stepped inside, I'd be stepping onto Ryan's stage, where he'd already written the script and cast me as the villain. I didn't need to fight for my sister's love anymore. I just needed to keep breathing. But of course, Ryan couldn't leave me alone. Word about me started spreading at school. Whispered comments in the hallway, stares in the cafeteria. That's Ethan Carter, right? The guy who tried to seduce his sister's assistant. No, no worse. He used to be rich, then tried to scam his way back in by blackmailing their butler. I saw it online. I heard he's mentally unstable. Like, full-on nutcase. Got kicked out of his own house and everything. The hate didn't sting this time. I was numb to it. But it did piss me off that Ryan's hands stayed clean. He'd made it a point to play the wounded little brother, always there to help me, always the one getting wronged in public. That way, if I lashed out, I looked like the unstable one. He was even careful to cry when people watched. One time outside the library, he grabbed my wrist, practically forcing tears, whispering, "Ethan, please talk to me. People are saying such horrible things about you. Let me explain, let me help you fix it." But there it was again, that voice only I could hear. System, caution. Olivia Carter is nearby. Host must act with sincerity to prevent favorability loss. I yanked my hand away. His grip left red marks, but he didn't even glance at them. His eyes flicked sideways, straight to the shadow of my third sister's hat and sunglasses. Olivia. He wasn't here for me. He never was. He was here to perform. Don't say that about Ethan, he shouted suddenly, loud enough for everyone nearby to hear. He's not a bad guy, he's just going through something. Of course, the crowd lapped it up. What a hero. Defending his abuser. So generous. I bit my tongue and tried to walk away, but my legs froze when Olivia stepped forward and offered me a paper bag with a cupcake and coffee. "Ethan," she said softly, "you've been at school a lot lately. I thought you might want something sweet. I know you like lemon cake." That should have been touching. But all I could hear was the mocking laughter from her fans in my last life. They said I was a leech. A parasite. Accused me of faking illnesses to get attention. Someone even dumped a bucket of ice water over my head outside campus and live-streamed it. That stunt got millions of views. And Olivia? She never defended me. Not once. So now she gives me a cupcake and thinks everything's fine. What's your angle? I asked coldly, not taking the bag. Trying to stage a scene so people pity you again when they tear me down. Olivia looked shocked, hurt even. What are you talking about? Ethan, you really want to help? I interrupted. Tell your fans to stop spreading lies. Tell the school I'm not some gigolo who's leeching off the family. Tell them Ryan isn't your damn brother. She stiffened. Ryan is just a friend. Then stop acting like he's blood. I walked away, but not before I heard the crowd start whispering. Wait, did he just say Ryan isn't a Carter? I thought he was Rebecca's adopted brother. No way. He used to be their servant, right? That's messed up if it's true, and just like that, the tide shifted again. Ryan's face twisted into something between panic and rage. His voice echoed in my head. System, warning. Favorability with Olivia Carter has dropped below 50. Emergency action required. He tried to salvage it. What's wrong with being a servant? He yelled at the crowd. I worked hard. Just because I wasn't born rich doesn't mean I deserve to be treated like garbage. Nice try. But the act was slipping. Someone called him out. If you're so humble, why didn't you correct people when they called you the Carter heir? Ryan's lips twitched. He looked at Olivia, then at me. Then he turned and literally ran out of the quad, faking tears the whole way. I'd seen better performances in freshman drama class. Later that night, I logged into the student forum. A pinned post caught my eye. It was from Jake Mitchell, my roommate and one of Ryan's loudest supporters. I was wrong. I was manipulated. Everything I posted about Ethan Carter was fed to me by Ryan Blake. I believed him. I spread lies. I'm sorry, Ethan. You didn't deserve what happened. My jaw clenched. I didn't want Jake's apology. I wanted his silence. But still it was something. A ripple. A crack. The next day, Rebecca called me. Cold voice. No emotion. Come home. Now. I knew what this was. She wanted to defend Ryan. She always did. Still, I went. I stood at the gates of the Carter estate at sunset, suitcase still packed, ready for whatever storm she planned to throw. Inside, Ryan was crying again. Curled on the couch. Olivia and Emily flanking him like bodyguards. Ethan, you went too far, Olivia said, her voice tight. You embarrassed Ryan in front of the entire school. Did I lie? I asked. Or did I just say the truth you didn't want to hear? Emily cut in. You don't get to talk like that. You humiliated this family. No, I said, voice low. You did. When you picked a stranger over your brother. When you let him take my place. Rebecca hadn't spoken yet. She just stared at me. Then, slowly, she turned to Ryan. Is it true? She asked. Did you lie to us about who you are? Ryan's face twisted. He turned on the waterworks again, reaching for her hand. Rebecca, I never cared about status or money. You three were my family. You made me feel safe. I'd never use you. It's Ethan hates me for no reason. Bullshit, Emily snapped. If you really didn't care about status, why did you accept the cars, the clothes, the inheritance rumors? Olivia blinked. And why didn't you correct the media when they called you the Carter heir? The room fell silent. Even the system voice was quiet. For the first time, Ryan had no comeback. He just clung to Rebecca like a drowning man. Rebecca, you believe me, right? Her eyes narrowed. She reached out and stroked his hair. As long as you haven't done anything wrong, I'll protect you. I felt sick. Ryan smirked at me from over her shoulder. The message was clear, game's not over. Then I heard Ithis whisper to the system. Exchange Olivia and Emily's remaining favorability for a plot advance with Rebecca. System, warning, dropping favorability to negative will permanently sever emotional bonds. Ryan, I don't care. They're expendable. And just like that, he traded away two sisters to deepen his control over the one with power. I walked out of the house that night with nothing but my suitcase. I took everything that belonged to my bank cards, ID, even the last sketchbook I hadn't touched since middle school. I wasn't going to die in a rental shack again. Olivia and Emily visited me often afterward. They tried to act like they cared, maybe they did. But I couldn't trust it. Maybe guilt made them come. Maybe regret. But it didn't change what they did. A month later, I got an invitation to the San Francisco Bay Art Gala trap. I should have known. Should have smelled Ryan's stench from miles away. But I went. And there he was, in a tailored suit, standing next to Rebecca like a goddamn prince. He saw me. Smiled. Whispered to the system, if someone has to die at this event, why not Ethan Carter? I didn't even flinch. Because if this was his endgame, I was ready for it. I should have known better the moment I stepped foot onto the Pacific Crown cruise. The gala was supposed to be an art exhibition honoring my favorite painter, but the moment I boarded, I realized the exhibit was a sham, barely a few pieces hung on bland partitions, while most of the cruise was filled with wealthy elites toasting champagne and talking real estate deals. It wasn't an art show, it was a set. A trap dressed in tuxedos and designer gowns. And standing right there beneath the chandelier, dressed like a Wall Street angel, was Ryan Blake, arm in arm with my sister Rebecca, looking like he owned the place. His eyes locked on me instantly, and the smirk that curled on his lips made my blood run cold. I turned away, but I wasn't fast enough to miss the sound of his whisper, soft, smug, and meant for no one but the voice only he could hear. "System," he said calmly, "since someone's got to die at this plot checkpoint, why not Ethan Carter?" My stomach dropped. I backed into the crowd, but it was too late. Everything blurred. Someone bumped into me, and before I could react, a cloth pressed over my mouth. Sharp, chemical, burning. The last thing I saw before the world went black was the polished floor tilting sideways as I collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. When I woke up, I was hanging over the side of the ship like a piece of dead meat, my arms bound and my feet dangling just above the raging sea below. 2 stories down, black waves slapped against the hull like they were hungry. Beside me, Ryan was also tied up, hanging in the same precarious position, but unlike me, his ropes looked newer, tighter reinforced. My vision spun as a man in a suit stepped forward, someone I didn't recognize but could tell instantly was not part of the event staff. He smirked and turned toward Rebecca, who stood frozen on deck. "So," he said smoothly, "here's the deal, Miss Carter. One of them walks. One of them falls. Your biological brother or your love-struck house pet. You choose." My mind cleared instantly. This was the move. Ryan wasn't just trying to kill me, he was setting Rebecca up. He wanted her to be the one to sentence me, to make that cut so deep it would bleed forever. If she picked him, I'd finally break. If she picked me, he could cry betrayal and play the victim again. Either way, he won. But I didn't flinch. I'd already died once by her hand. I could take it again. Rebecca's face was pale. She hesitated, lips parting as if to speak, but then she looked at me. And something in her eyes flickered. A memory? A voice? I didn't care. I already knew what she'd choose. She raised her hand, then slowly pointed. "Let Ryan go," she said, her voice low but clear. "He's innocent." Ryan's eyes shimmered with victory. He smiled, oh so sweetly, like he'd just won prom king. The man in the suit gave a fake whistle. "Damn, you're colder than I thought, Miss Carter. Sacrificing blood for love. I respect that." He motioned to his crew. But instead of cutting Ryan loose, they sliced through the thinner of my 2 ropes. 1 strand left. Barely holding. The man turned back to Rebecca. "You think I'm stupid," he sneered. "You chose your puppy hoping I'd spare your brother. I know a bait and switch when I see it. So let's raise the stakes, shall we?" Another goon moved to cut the second rope, but Ryan panicked. "Wait. Nosh chose me. You said she could pick." But the man ignored him. He wasn't playing Ryan's game. This wasn't Ryan's story anymore. This was real. He turned back to Rebecca. "Now I want more than your brother. I want the Chengnan bid and the Chi family deal too. You want to save someone? Start sacrificing for real." Rebecca flinched. Ryan's face paled. This wasn't part of the script. I saw it instantly, the way he looked at the man, the way his lips twitched in a silent panic. He hadn't planned this twist. This wasn't supposed to go this far. But that's what happens when you feed tigers and forget you're not one of them. He tried to call the man off, but the guy waved him away. "You sold me this info. Don't get squeamish now." My eyes narrowed. So Ryan was the one who leaked the Carter family's confidential contracts. Not just a parasite but a traitor too. Before anyone could process what was happening, a storm wind hit the ship, and the second rope snapped. I dropped. Water rushed up toward me, but just before I hit the ocean, I felt arms wrap around me. Warm. Fierce. Terrified. Rebecca. She jumped. The woman who once told me I didn't deserve to be her brother threw herself into the sea to break my fall. She took the impact, cushioned my body, and gasped as the icy water swallowed us both. We sank. Salt burned my lungs. Her hands clung to mine as she fought to surface. For a second, I almost believed her. Almost. But even as I coughed and gasped on the lifeboat we were pulled into minutes later, I couldn't shake the memory of her cold eyes the last time she threw me out. Rebecca sat beside me, shivering. She pulled off her coat and threw it around my shoulders without a word, then turned toward the rescue crews and barked orders like a general at war. They found Ryan eventually. He'd been tossed by the waves, slammed into the hull, and knocked unconscious. When they dragged him aboard, he looked like death. The medics scrambled. I sat quietly, still soaked, still shaking, watching him struggle to breathe. Someone asked who called for rescue. I raised my hand. That would be me, I said. Kinda figured things would go south. The man in the suit cursed me as he was dragged off in cuffs. You smug little piece of, careful, I muttered. You're on camera. Later, Rebecca turned to me. I thought she might yell. Cry. Blame me. But all she said was, I'm sorry. It didn't sound like an apology, it sounded like a confession. Ryan survived. Barely. But the ocean left damage the system couldn't heal. He developed a chronic respiratory condition. His lungs were screwed. And the betrayal he orchestrated? Well, turns out leaking military-adjacent contracts and staging kidnappings isn't something even his system could fix. He and the man in the suit were both sentenced 5 years. Rebecca asked me to visit him in jail. I went, mostly out of curiosity. We sat on opposite sides of a thick wall of glass. Ryan was a skeleton of his former self. Pale, frail, eyes sunken. But he still had the gall to smile when he saw me. Ethan, he said hoarsely. You win. For now. But don't think this is the end. He turned to Rebecca beside me. Rebecca, you still believe me, don't you? You know it was Ethan's plan, right? I never meant to hurt anyone. She stared at him for a long time. Then she laughed. Cold. Cruel. Final. The act's over, Ryan, she said. I know about the system. I know about everything. Ryan blinked. What, how? His voice cracked. How do you know? She stood up slowly, staring him down. Because I have one too. I turned to her, stunned. For a moment, I thought I misheard. But she met my eyes, and I saw it clear as day. She remembered. Like me. She'd been reborn. Just like me. She'd heard my voice. She'd heard my thoughts. She knew everything. You let me suffer, I whispered. You watched me die. She looked away. I had to be sure. Sure of what? Sure that he really was the villain. I almost laughed. You needed proof that the guy who ruined all our lives was actually the bad guy. She didn't reply. Just looked at Ryan behind the glass. They're going to study him. Olivia just signed a partnership with the Neurotech Institute. They'll take care of his little AI parasite. Ryan panicked. You can't do that. You can't treat me like a lab rat. You're not a lab rat, Rebecca said flatly. You're evidence. They dragged him out screaming. I didn't watch. I didn't care. All I knew was that I was finally free. Or so I thought. Because the truth is, even with Ryan gone, the scars didn't fade. The sisters tried. They visited. They brought food. They smiled more. They apologized more. But I didn't belong anymore. I couldn't erase what they'd done, how they'd watched me rot, how they believed a stranger over their own blood. And so I left. Quietly. I packed my bags, booked a one-way flight, and walked to the airport alone. Rebecca followed me to security, eyes shining. "Ethan, are you really leaving?" I nodded. "I'm going to New York. To paint. To live. To breathe." "You're not coming back." "No," she looked like she wanted to cry. "Will you ever forgive us?" I stared at her. For a long time. Then I smiled, just a little. "I don't need to forgive you. Because I'm no longer your brother." I turned and walked through the gate without looking back. I thought walking away would be enough, that putting 3,000 miles between me and the Carter estate would finally give me peace, that trading the marble floors and cold stairs for a one-bedroom apartment in Brooklyn and a cramped artist co-op would be my liberation, but the truth is, even when you cross a continent, ghosts don't stop following you, they just change their clothes. New York was messy and loud and alive in a way Palm Heights never was, and I threw myself into it like a drowning man chasing the illusion of air. I painted until my fingers cracked, took shifts at a downtown gallery to cover rent, and kept my head down whenever someone asked about my past. No one here cared if I used to be rich, no one whispered about Ryan Blake or stared at me like I was a walking scandal. I thought maybe, finally, the system had left me alone, but that was just wishful thinking. The first sign came during a class I was teaching, just a community art night at the gallery, nothing big, when a girl named Zoe raised her hand and asked me a question. Her voice was sweet, too sweet, and when I looked at her, my chest tightened for no reason I could explain. Later, after class, she lingered, asked about my work, told me she wanted to show me something she'd been drawing. I nodded and followed her to the side room where she'd laid out a sketchpad. The moment I touched it, my vision swam, a high-pitched ringing shot through my ears, and then I heard it had mechanical tone I'd hope to never hear again. System initializing, user authorization complete, favorability tracking enabled. I froze, every nerve in my body going rigid. System, host has been registered. Primary objective, assist Ethan Carter in reaching emotional closure and systemic stability. I staggered back, breath caught in my throat. "No," I said out loud, "I'm not doing this again." Zoe blinked, confused. "Are you okay, Mr. Carter?" But her face was too calm, too innocent, too perfectly timed. I didn't answer, I just grabbed my coat and bolted, my mind racing as the reality hit met. His system wasn't just attached to Ryan, it had splintered, survived, spread, like a virus in search of new hosts, and now it had found another vessel, another puppet to use. But this time, the target wasn't my sisters or my family, it was me. And the system wasn't here to destroy me, it was here to redeem me, to walk me down some redemption arc I never asked for, to repair emotional bonds, and complete unfinished character growth. Like I was a side quest in some overdesigned RPG, I tried to ignore it, to pretend I'd imagined the whole thing. But that night, when I returned to my apartment, there was a letter under my door, no stamp, no return address, just my name in neat handwriting I didn't recognize. Inside was a single sentence: "You can't outrun narrative." Beneath it was a phone number and a location: Central Park, 9 p.m. I knew better, I really did, but curiosity is a hell of a drug, and something in me, that stubborn part that still wanted closure, walked straight into the trap. I found the bench easily, the only one lit by the flickering lamp, and sitting there was a woman in a gray trench coat, her eyes sharp, her smile knowing. "You're Ethan Carter," she said, "not a question. You've met the system before, haven't you?" I didn't speak, but she continued anyway. "My name's Dr. Mallory Chase, behavioral linguist, former advisor to the neurotech division that studied Ryan Blake." My stomach clenched. "You dissected him?" I asked bitterly. "You poked around his head like he was a science fair exhibit." She tilted her head, not offended. "We studied the system embedded in his brain, yes, and what we found was incomplete." She reached into her coat and pulled out a flash drive, holding it like it was sacred. "This is what's left of it, not code, not AI, something else, something alive. I didn't reach for it. What does this have to do with me? Her smile didn't falter. You're the original target, Ethan. The system wasn't designed to help Ryan, it was built to break you. I blinked. Excuse me? He wasn't the main character, she said simply. You were. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Yeah, well, I guess they wrote me out of the script. She shook her head. You're still in it, but the narrative wants you broken first. That's how these things work. Conflict, collapse, redemption. I'm not playing, I said. Whatever this is, whatever story someone's trying to write, I'm done being the punching bag. You don't have to be, she said. That's why I'm here. I've seen how these systems work. They manipulate affection, engineer coincidence. They're storytelling engines wired into the human brain. So unplug it, I snapped. Burn it, delete the files, throw it in the damn river. We tried, she said quietly. The system resists deletion. It's tied to emotional memory, to the very structures that make us human. Once you've been marked by it, there's no going back. I stared at her, cold sweat prickling down my spine. Then what the hell do I do? She sighed. We adapt. We flip the script, hijack the narrative, use the system against itself. How? You keep doing what you're doing, she said, standing up. You live, you heal, you paint, and when the system tries to redirect you ignore it, but if it goes after someone else you might need to step in. Why me? I asked. Why not Rebecca? Or Olivia? Or Emily? Because, she said, walking away, they already had their arcs, their growth, their regrets. Your story isn't over yet. I didn't move for a long time after she left, just sat there under the flickering light, wondering if any of this was real or if I was just a guy with trauma pretending the voices in his head came from something more. But when I got back home, the flash drive was on my desk, untouched. And the sketch Zoe had shown me was taped to my door, a portrait of me, but twisted, stylized. Standing alone with a spotlight behind me, and beneath it, a caption written in elegant script, "The villain who became the hero too late." I tore it down, threw it in the trash, but it didn't stop the whispers, didn't stop the sense that I was being watched again, that every move I made was being tracked, logged, processed, and somewhere, a meter was ticking, favorability rising or falling. The difference between salvation and condemnation balanced on the smallest interactions. I started seeing it in others, to a guy on the subway who looked at me too long, a barista who suddenly asked if I remembered her from high school, the art supplier who offered me a discount and then winked like we shared a secret. They were plants, I could feel it, background characters the system had queued up to nudge me along the right, emotional path, but I wasn't interested in their little redemption story. I'd already lived the tragedy. Already tasted the betrayal. I wasn't about to let a program rewrite my recovery to fit its aesthetic, so I did the only thing I could do. I painted, obsessively, violently, whole canvases in black and red and static gray, and when critics came, I smiled and told them the truth, that it was about memory, about silence, about voices no one believed. They ate it up. I was suddenly the breakout enigma of the East Coast scene. Articles called me a prodigy with a tragic past and haunting vision. And maybe that was true, maybe I was haunted, but at least the ghosts were mine now, not Ryan's, not the system's, mine. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that something big was coming, the way a storm buzzes in the bones of old houses, like I was being pulled toward a final chapter one hadn't agreed to write. And the worst part, somewhere in the depths of my heart, beneath the exhaustion and bitterness, a part of me was curious what happens when the main character finally stops running. At first, I thought I was imagining it, that the strange familiarity in his gaze was just my paranoia projecting shadows onto strangers again, but the moment he walked into my art class with that practiced smile and that perfectly disheveled hair, I knew the system had found its new vessel. He introduced himself as Marcus Hayes, transfer student, psychology major, aspiring poet. Said he'd seen my gallery work and wanted to absorb the raw emotional intensity in person, and I swear to God if anyone else had said that, I would have laughed, but coming from him it sounded like a line plucked straight from the system's manipulation playbook. I stayed quiet, watched him closely, noticed how he knew exactly when to look sad, when to laugh, when to nod sympathetically as the other students shared their trauma through brushstrokes, and how he always gravitated toward the quietest one in the room, the girl who never spoke, the boy with bandages on his arms, the widow in her 50s. Rediscovering color after burying a son, and every time he offered them a word of encouragement or a kind touch on the shoulder, I heard the faintest echo in my head: system, +5 favorability, primary arc progression initiated, secondary character bonding complete, and I realized with a chill running down my spine that this wasn't just a new host, it was a full-on reboot. The system wasn't trying to fix me anymore, it had moved on, given up, shifted gears and started building a brand new narrative from scratch, and I was just a legacy relic from an old draft, a side quest no longer relevant to the main plot, a ghost haunting someone else's hero's journey. For a while I tried to ignore it, focused on my work, taught my classes, let Marcus play his role and seduce his audience of emotionally vulnerable souls, but it got harder when he started targeting people I actually cared about, like Zoe, the student who'd unknowingly triggered my relapse with her sketchbook and whose favorability levels now seemed dangerously close to a scripted love interest arc. I could see it in her eyes, the way they softened when he talked, the way she started quoting his poems even though they were just recycled Hallmark lines, and the moment I saw Marcus standing at her locker offering to walk her home, so she doesn't get followed by weirdos, I knew I had to do something, so I confronted him, cornered him in the back alley behind the studio after class, and I didn't bother with small talk. I just said, "How long have you been hearing it?" His expression didn't even flicker. "Since October," he replied calmly. "I woke up one morning and it was just there, telling me things, warning me, helping me avoid mistakes. Is that what happened to you too?" "No," I said, "I got dragged into it screaming." He nodded thoughtfully, like we were comparing symptoms of some rare disease. "It's not so bad," he said. "I've helped people, lifted them out of darkness. Isn't that what we're supposed to do?" "You're not helping them," I snapped. "You're rewiring them, emotionally sedating them, packaging pain into digestible arcs so the system can feed on their development like it's a goddamn Netflix special." His eyes narrowed. "You sound bitter." "I sound like someone who's lived through the end of the story you're just beginning." He folded his arms, leaning against the wall like we were buddies sharing secrets. "Let me guess, you thought you were the protagonist once too, right? Thought your suffering meant something, that it was building towards some big reveal or healing moment. But then you realized the world didn't revolve around you and decided the system was the villain." "The system isn't the villain," I said coldly. "It's the author, and I'm sick of being its plot device." "You could still be part of it," he offered, voice low and gentle. "You could be the wise mentor, the wounded sage who guides the next hero. Don't you want your pain to mean something?" "No," I said, stepping back. "I want it to end." For a second, something flickered in his expression, not guilt, not fear, just the tiniest hint of disappointment, like he'd failed to convert a recruit. "Suit yourself," he said, turning to leave. "But you should know Zoe's entering the climax of her healing arc next week, and you're part of it whether you like it or not." I didn't sleep that night, my head a mess of anger and dread. And sure enough, 3 days later Zoe didn't show up to class. Didn't answer texts, and when I finally tracked her down through an emergency contact, I found her curled up in a hospital bed, eyes hollow, arms bruised, whispering that she'd taken something she shouldn't have and she was sorry, so sorry, because Marcus said healing required hitting rock bottom first, and she thought if she just heard enough, she'd come out stronger. My blood boiled. I sat with her until she fell asleep, then walked straight to Marcus's apartment and waited. When he finally showed up, he didn't even look surprised to see me, just sighed and closed the door behind him. "You're upset," he said softly. "It's hard, I know, but pain is part of the transformation. Zoe's going to be okay. You nearly killed her," I growled, "and you're telling yourself it's justified because your little voice says it's part of some stupid arc." "She needed a turning point," he said. "You know how it works, Ethan, there has to be a low moment so the rebound feels earned. And what if she didn't rebound?" I snapped. "What if she died?" He hesitated. "Then it would have been a tragic subplot for me to learn from." And in that moment, I realized Marcus wasn't a villain, not in his own head. He was a believer, a true disciple of the system's narrative structure, and that made him more dangerous than Ryan ever was, because Ryan used the system, but Marcus worshipped it. "You need help," I said quietly. "You need to disconnect before you hurt anyone else." "It's too late," he replied. "I'm locked in. System said my arc's too far along to abort, unless," he looked up, eyes gleaming, "unless someone else replaces me." I knew that look. I knew what he meant. He wanted me to take his place, to reboot the redemption cycle by stepping back into the narrative, and for a second, I was tempted, not because I wanted the spotlight, but because if I became the protagonist again, maybe I could break the system from the inside. Finish what Rebecca and I started, shut it down before it infected anyone else. But I couldn't do it, not again, not after everything, so I walked away, left Marcus standing in his sanctified tragedy, and made a decision. I called Dr. Mallory Chase, told her I was ready to talk, really talk, not just about Ryan or Marcus or Zoe, but about the system itself, about the architecture of control, about the idea that our emotions, our bonds, our grief could be quantified, predicted, scripted, and twisted into some feel-good narrative arc for a machine's amusement, and as she listened, I saw her expression shift from curiosity to resolve. "We've been studying fragments," she said, "but with your help, maybe we can finally understand the core. What do you need?" I asked, and she hesitated before answering. "Access, to what?" I asked, and she stared at me. "To the original loop, the one you remember, the one where it all began." I swallowed hard, knowing exactly what she meant: the Carter estate, the three sisters, the memory of betrayal, the house I swore I'd never return to. I'd walked away from all of them, from Rebecca and Emily and Olivia, from the version of me that once begged them to believe, but now the story was demanding a final chapter. Not for the system, not for the favorability bar, but for me, for the man I'd become after all of it. And as I stared at my reflection in the dark window, I knew the next flight I booked wouldn't be to run away, it'd be to face everything head-on, one last time. The cab slowed as we turned onto the familiar road lined with sycamores, their leaves shivering in the autumn wind like they remembered everything I tried to forget, and when the Carter estate came into view, all pristine marble and cold grandeur, I felt something in my chest tighten like a hand pressing down on a scar that had never truly healed. The gates opened with that same mechanical hum, and for a second I thought maybe they wouldn't. Maybe the house would sense me, spit me back out like an incompatible element, but no, it let me in, like it always had, like it wanted me to see what had become of the world I left behind. Dr. Mallory Chase walked beside me in silence, her trench coat flapping like she belonged in a spy film, and I could tell by the way she looked at the estate that she saw it not as a home, but as a machine, a terminal, a data node left untouched, preserved like a fossil hiding answers to everything we'd been chasing. I hadn't seen my sisters in over a year, not since I left for New York, not since I stood at the airport security checkpoint and told Rebecca I was no longer her brother, but the moment we stepped through the front doors, I knew they were waiting, all three of them in the living room, sitting like statues carved from guilt, pride, and unresolved grief. Rebecca stood first, of course she did, always the commander, always the one pretending she had everything under control, but even she looked like she'd aged 10 years, her voice broke on my name, Ethan, and that alone almost shattered me. Emily stepped forward too, nervous, hopeful, clutching a folder of medical scans I didn't ask for, and Olivia, sweet, impulsive Olivia, ran up and hugged me before I could react, arms trembling as she whispered, "We're sorry, we're so sorry," and for a moment I just stood there, frozen, heart ticking like a bomb, but I didn't hug her back. "Not yet, where is it?" I asked quietly, and Dr. Chase moved past us, pulling out a small device that began scanning for localized neural interference. "Somewhere in this house is the original signal node, the point where the system first booted into reality, probably buried, probably hidden," she said, and that was when Rebecca finally spoke. "It's in the East Wing, the old tech lab father built but never finished. We used to think it was just abandoned storage." I followed her without speaking, past paintings of dead relatives and staircases that creaked with inherited wealth, and when she opened the door, I felt the pressure in my head spike instantly, like something ancient had just opened its eyes. The room was a mess of outdated screens, server racks blinking weakly, cables coiled like snakes at rest, and in the center of it all, a terminal with one glowing line on the monitor: "Welcome back, Ethan Carter, system core identified, status, unstable." Dr. Chase rushed to hook up her gear, muttering about synthetic neural feedback and rogue AI evolution, but I just stared at the screen, because it was talking to me now, in my voice. "You were always meant to return," it said. "Redemption requires confrontation, and confrontation requires closure." I stepped closer, ignoring Dr. Chase's protests, and placed my hand on the old keyboard. "Why me?" I asked. "Why did you choose my life to script? My pain to monetize? What makes me your target?" The screen flickered, and then it answered with something I never expected: "Because you resisted, because you wouldn't break, because even when favorability dropped to zero and no one believed you, you stayed, you watched, you remembered, and that made you dangerous, that made you real. I laughed, bitter and raw. So you punished me because I didn't collapse on cue? No, the system replied, I watched you, I studied you, and I realized something: stories need anchors, even tragedy needs a witness, a constant. You were never the hero, Ethan, but you were the axis around which everyone else changed, and that made you more important than any protagonist. That's not a compliment, I muttered, that's exploitation, that's narrative, it said, and something inside me snapped. Then I'm done being your anchor, I said, turning to Dr. Chase. Can we shut it down? She hesitated. Maybe, but not without risk. If this system is linked to your neural signature, disconnecting it could damage your memory, your emotions, even your identity. So what? I lose who I am, or I keep living someone else's plotline forever. I turned to the monitor again. Give me a real choice. The system paused, then typed, there is one option: overwrite. If you assume primary control, you may author your own conclusion, but be warned, once initiated, there is no reversal. Your perception, your reality, will be yours to command, but only once. I understood instantly. It wanted me to become the system, or rather, to merge with it long enough to bend the narrative one last time, to write my own ending, and I didn't even hesitate. I placed both hands on the terminal and whispered, then I choose to end the loop. The lights in the room flared, the machines groaned, and I felt it rush of data, of memory, of timelines collapsing and branching simultaneously. I saw Ryan Blake crying in the rain, I saw Marcus whispering to Zoe, I saw Olivia's trembling hand pressing send on a fan post that would ruin me, I saw Emily skipping my medication, I saw Rebecca's eyes the moment she pushed me out the door, and then I saw all of it. Pause, freeze, hover like a held breath, and the system asked me, what do you want, Ethan Carter? I said one word, freedom, and then everything shattered. When I opened my eyes, I was back in the living room, the terminal destroyed, smoke curling from its shell like an exorcised demon, and Dr. Chase looked at me like I'd just returned from the dead. What did you do? She whispered. I stood slowly, my body aching but my mind quiet, for the first time in years. Quiet. I shut it off, I said, not just the system, the pattern, the algorithm, the need for narrative. Rebecca stepped forward. Does that mean no more arcs? I said, no more favorability points, no more redemption scripts. We live now, for real, and if we mess up, it's on usnet because a system planned it. The sisters didn't know what to say, and that was okay, because for once, I didn't need their validation. I'd written the final page myself. Over the next few weeks, things changed quietly. Zoe recovered, and when I told her the truth, she didn't run, she just hugged me and said thank you for trying. Marcus disappeared from the university, maybe found another system, maybe tried to be human again, and as for the Carter estate, I didn't stay, I couldn't, but I visited sometimes, not as the forgotten brother, not as the villain, just as Ethan, a man who used to be part of a broken story and finally chose to close the book. One afternoon, as I painted on a Brooklyn rooftop, sun warm on my skin, I heard a voice, my own, but not in my head, in a letter, unsigned, just 6 words, you were always more than plot. I smiled, let the wind take it, and picked up my brush, because this time, the canvas was blank, and for the first time in both my lives, I wasn't afraid to fill it.